Hello and welcome to Recap Radio. I'm Diego Cupolo, Editor-in-Chief of Turkey Recap, and this is our live show about Turkish politics and foreign policy. Today I'm talking to Fiona Mullen, Director of Sapienta Economics, a consultancy based in Cyprus. And you're a proud owner of Substack, right? Thanks for joining us, Fiona.
That's good to be here. Thanks.
And what's the internet, the URL to your Substack? It's sapienta.substack.com, right?
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Highly recommended for people looking to follow this subject in more detail. I'm going to dip in today, just slightly, with a 30-minute talk on what happened in the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus elections last Sunday. Basically, Turkish Cypriots went to the polls and elected a pro-EU candidate over an Ankara-backed incumbent, signaling a potential political shift in the breakaway state, which is only recognized by Turkey. Tufan Erhürman won the presidency with nearly 63% of the vote. It was a landslide victory against the former president, Ersin Tatar, who got 36% of the vote. Tatar has long supported a two-state solution for Cyprus. In contrast, the new president, Erhürman, looks to revive reunification talks with Cyprus, and is closely aligned with Kemalism and secularism, doing a little hat tip to Ataturk in his inauguration speech. In this podcast, we'll talk about elections in the Turkish Republic of Cyprus, Northern Cyprus. Sorry, it's a lot of words. The TRNC, I'm going to say. And we're going to talk about what they mean for the Republic of Cyprus, the south of Cyprus, which is the EU state, and also what it means for Turkey and the Eastern Mediterranean. Before we start, this is a live show. We welcome questions from the live audience. We're going to talk for about 30 minutes. With that said, Fiona, who is the new president, Tufan Erhürman, and why do you believe he won?
So he's came from an academic background. He was a lawyer, academic lawyer. And I think he's not the first, actually, person who, legal academic, a bit like Kudret Öztürk before him, both of them were involved in the negotiations under Mehmet Ali Talat back in 2008, 2009. I was the other side, in the middle of the table as a UN staffer back then as well, and got a taste, I think, for politics by being involved in the negotiations. His chapter was governance, one of the most important chapters. So then he ended up, I forget when he became an MP, but he ended up as actual prime minister for a short while in 2018-19. Then he ran against both Tatar, who won last time, and Mustafa Akıncı in the 2020 presidential elections, but came third. So, but he got about 20% of the vote. So I think that gave him encouragement, let's say, to try again this time. So that's who he is, a kind of lawyer. People say he's a sort of friendly, stable guy, and so quite likable. But why did he win? I think there was the real message out of this, because it's a massive, it was first round, 63% is absolutely huge. And I think it was a combination of people who normally would vote for UBP, which is Tatar's party, and others who would naturally vote for CTP, Erhürman's party. Kind of, it was a real sort of saying, look, we have our own agency. Stop pushing us around. And the pushing around came from three different sources. One was Turkish, not necessarily Erdogan, but people in Turkey interference in UBP party elections, which really annoyed them. So about 1 in 6 UBP voters voted for Erhürman. Second is a kind of business, a lot of business people, not all of them, let's say, some of them a bit shady, moving into Northern Cyprus, taking up all the property and kind of elbowing out the locals and so on. That's not liked either. And kind of talking down to Turkish Cypriots. This is sort of what you hear. And then the third one is the cultural war, if you like. As you mentioned, Turkish Cypriots really are, the indigenous Turkish Cypriots are very secular, and there have been efforts to try and, let's say, change some of the, like, they really don't like the idea of hijab in the classroom and stuff like that. So there's been arguments about that. So all of those together end up in 63% for Tufan Erhürman. Yeah.
Yeah, and is it accurate to say he's pro-EU? That's what the news headline said, and I'm just wondering what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a pro-federal solution, you're kind of by default pro-EU. But he did, one of his messages, and it was also a message to people of Turkish origin, some of whom would get, they would have citizenship of United Cyprus. That's why they were also voting in favour. So in that sense, he's more for sure. Tatar is definitely very anti-EU, but so in that sense, he would be pro-EU. I think the EU will have a much easier time now.
Yeah, we got a lot to cover, and I'm going to try to do this fast. But following the elections, the Nationalist Party leader here in Turkey, Devlet Bahçeli, called on the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus to reject these elections and invited that unrecognized state to join Turkey as a 82nd province of Turkey. If you're saying that the Turkish Cypriots don't like this kind of meddling, I'm guessing that further aggravated sentiments towards Turkish meddling in local politics there.
A friend of mine the Turkish Cypriot friend of mine who was involved in the Erhürman campaign said, I think it's less likely than annexation. I had two articles on the go on Sunday, one of which was if Tatar won, and then I think annexation might have been more possible. But with this, it's really difficult, And also, Bahçeli was saying, it's illegitimate because there was only a 64% turnout. Well, there was only a 58% turnout in the first round last time. So, okay, it was a little bit higher in the second, but still.
Yeah, and 65% is pretty good for most EU.
Yeah, because there's a lot of Turkish Cypriots live abroad, so they're eligible to vote. There's also reports that, they haven't cleaned out all the dead people yet and things like that. So it's pretty good turnout, to be honest. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Nice. So I'm guessing that I'm forgetting the exact date, but Turkey sponsored the construction of a presidential complex in the capital there. That basically Erdogan was there to inaugurate it. I think it was for the last anniversary of the intervention of Turkey, as they say. Or the one before. And Erdogan was saying he wanted to make a palace fitting of the presidency for the Turkish nation. How is that received? Is that also seen as Turkish meddling?
To be honest, I don't actually know, but it could have been. The palace that it was before, which apparently he called a shack when he visited it. It's a nice old colonial building, but it was the I think the residence of the British governor. So in that sense, you could see why they wanted to move it elsewhere. But I don't know, to be honest, if people. I guess if you were generally against Tatar, you wouldn't have liked the idea of this fancy palace,
So what's this look like from the other side of the border zone, the EU buffer zone in Cyprus? What are Greek Cypriots' reaction? Have you heard anything notable?
So I think let's start with the most pessimistic is the people who try to say, he's just a puppet of Turkey, and you think, hang on a minute, he got 63%, and Turkey was obviously supporting Tatar. So you're always going to get that classic reaction from some. At least the Republic of Cyprus Greek Cypriot President Stratholidis has shown he's talking the talk. Let's see if he walks the walk. But he's saying, yes, I'm ready to start talks and so on. It's going to be tough though because of Erhürman's conditions for getting back to the table. And so I think we are. But plus, in the south where I live, we've got the EU rotating presidency from January to June, so nobody expects anything to happen in that period. Stratholidis will be too busy getting photo ops.
And what are the conditions of Erhürman to get to the table?
So remember them off my heart. One is acceptance of political equality, which is, that's in a Security Council resolution going back to 1991. So there's more to do with how do you define it. The other, the key one is this one about consequences, that if everything collapses, the Turkish Cypriots are not left in limbo, right? And that kind of scares the Greek Cypriots, because what they think they're hearing is two states, is that if it collapses, there'll be two states. Whereas that's not necessarily what the Turkish Cypriots are asking for. But I think they need, my fear is that as long as nobody's putting flesh on those details, the vacuum's going to be filled by people saying, oh, it's just their excuse to go for two states. So they really need to move very fast and start saying, okay, what might consequences look like in a way that both sides can actually be comfortable with, the threats, consequences, political equality, and I honestly can't remember. I didn't sleep much last night. I can't remember the other two.
All of us. But I mean, you're talking about moving fast. Cyprus talks are not known for moving fast.
Yeah.
So to recap where we were, in 2017 was the last real effort, Crans-Montana, right? And that didn't work. And more recently, there's been different kinds of negotiations about starting negotiations, which it's very funny to report because it makes sentences that don't make sense as a text journalist.
I call it talks about talks about talks.
It's never-ending complexity. So how do you see it if you had to guess? Do you see like any possible shift in the talks in the near term, or is this like way off in the future?
I think, let's say, the best opportunity is going to be after parliamentary elections in the south in May. And so it's going to be basically this time next year. We've got the EU presidency will be over, and importantly, Eni, Italian oil and gas firm, is going to be close to producing natural gas from the Republic of Cyprus offshore exclusive economic zone. And I think if you haven't got back to the table by the time that happens, then we're going to have, Turkey's going to start marking up, and Turkish Cypriots are going to say, where is our share of the revenues and so on. So I think there will be pressure on both sides to get it started by then. And I'm not. Will it happen? I don't know. It will depend on whether they can find this modus operandi that both sides are comfortable with. So,
at the same time, last year with the Biden administration in the U.S., there was a strengthening of security cooperation between the Republic of Cyprus and the U.S. And I'm wondering how that's factoring into push for possible resolutions, or is the status quo welcome?
Yeah, I think what happened is the US went from prioritizing the Cyprus problem up to Crans-Montana to prioritizing security after Crans-Montana. It was also, Turkey buying the S-400s from Russia didn't help. And so suddenly it's focused on, let's get close to Greece, let's get close to Cyprus. And the US, this is what I slightly worry about. Right now, the US has the Greek Cypriots exactly where it needs them. They dumped Russian influence left, right, and centre. So security-wise, defence-wise, and even business-wise. Okay, there's still quite a lot of Russians living here, but you talk to lawyers and accountants, there's very little business these days. Certainly no new business with Russians. So, and their reward for that, the Greek Cypriots, was they got the embargo lifted. So they're now buying from the US. The US is going to be building a base. It's supporting the building of a base. But everybody knows, it's like Alexandropoulos in Greece. It's going to be a US/NATO base in all but name, right? And so, they've moved very close to US. So that in a way, if the US doesn't pressurize them to get back to the table, then that's why I'm not 100% sure it will happen this time next year. Because, does Trump even care? All that kind of thing. The US is visibly less engaged in the Cyprus problem than it has been in the past. You
haven't noticed anything from the Trump administration on possible policy on Cyprus?
No. I mean, I think there's a certain sort of in let's say foreign ministries generally all over the world, so not just America, but that you default, you stay with the default until told otherwise. So in that sense, yes, they are kind of engaged, but I just get this feeling it's not one of their big priorities. But on the other hand, there are Greek Cypriots who are a bit scared. What if Trump turns around and says, "Right, I've done Israel. Now it's your turn," I think, and they're worried that they will have to accept, things that they would never accept.
Anything for the Nobel Peace Prize, right?
Yeah.
So the other big variable in the region is Israel, right? And I don't know what you hear there, but here in Ankara, there are talks that Cyprus is the new conflict zone after this era of conflicts. There's some belief here. I don't understand it. But because Israel is building ties with Cyprus and these bases, people are just assuming there's going to be a conflict in Cyprus. And maybe it's related to what you're saying, where Cypriots are purchasing U.S. arms.
Yeah, so, they've also purchased a kind of Iron Dome from Israel. I think, I haven't confirmed this, but I'm pretty sure. So this Iron Dome has different elements, one of which is you could, if they bought all levels of it, which I think they haven't, it would, would be within range of Turkey. I hope they haven't been. They've been clever enough not to buy that version. It's more about protect themselves from attack, but that's, of course, that's the problem. The Greek Cypriots think they're protecting themselves from Turkey, and Turkey thinks they're planning on, or Israel is planning on attacking Turkey somehow from Cyprus. What I actually think it's about is offshore gas facilities. Like, there's renewed talk of what are called floating liquefied natural gas plants, floating LNG plants, and it's more security risky to have those in Israel. So they might be offshore Cyprus, but still, combining. I mean, this is not a formal. No one's talking about this in any formal or public way, but that would be my. Why would you go to the risk of buying Israeli sort of protection? I think would be if you were going to do something like that with gas. So it's about gas, not about Turkey.
I want to get on the gas in detail, but before, let's finish the Israel topic, because what you're talking about, there was some Barak MX air defense system.
Yes, yeah.
And I can't find confirmation about this from politicians, from news sources. Is it just kind of a rumor? Do you think it's real? Did Cyprus actually acquire Israeli arms?
Yeah. Did I hear it? I was certainly looking it up last. I'm trying to remember if it's out of the mouth of a politician or not. I can't remember, to be honest. I'd have to look it up. So
yeah. Let's see what happens there. I should just note that there's a Turkish drone base on the Turkish Cypriot side, right?
Yeah.
So both sides do have some kinds of
we've got
developments in arms.
Militarization on both sides, and that's never good.
Yeah, and then we haven't said 40,000 Turkish soldiers in rotation occupying the north, and then you can use whatever verb you want. They're stationed there. I don't want to politicize this talk, but that's very difficult with a subject like Cyprus.
Yeah. So, I think I've said it on other interviews, but I think what Turkey doesn't understand is quite how scared the Greek Cypriots are of it. They're frightened to death of Turkey, and it's the topic on the front of the newspaper every single day. So, Turkey's done that. Turkey's done that. This is how they're threatening us. This is so, and so it's this rabbit in headlights mindset. And so then they don't understand why Turkey feels vulnerable if they go and buy protective equipment from the Israelis. Obviously, the fact is, the Israelis makes it more threatening for Turkey. I can see that.
Yeah. So, the gas issue, to focus on it a little more, was supposed to resolve the Cyprus problems, according to analysts 15 years ago when the gas discoveries were made offshore from Cyprus. That doesn't seem like it happened. How do you view gas developments in relation to politics? Because it does seem like it's just made everything worse.
Yeah, I think so. Cyprus, there was a discovery offshore in 2011, but they still haven't produced any, and I'm pretty sure that's because of the Cyprus problem. Why would companies, even though none of these discoveries is in areas that's claimed by Turkey, so there's a big chunk where Turkey says this is our continental shelf, and it won't let anybody go there, basically. People get, chased away if they're trying to do seismic surveys. But there's also so that's one part. The other part is that the Turkish Cypriots, they, as co-founders of the Republic of Cyprus, we are entitled to a share of the revenues for that gas. And I think this is probably why no one's tried producing gas yet. But we are now getting, it does seem to be quite real that ENI is going to be producing gas from what's called the Kronos field in Block 6. So, and I'm worried that if we don't have any progress on the Cyprus problem, what is Turkey going to do when that happens? Or when we reach final investment?
When you say ENI, you mean the Italian?
Yes.
Eni.
Yeah. Is that how you pronounce it? Good to
I'm
hear
not
from
even sure. I'm not a gas expert, so what do you? I mean, we first started talking maybe 7 years ago when there was a lot of talk about gas development in Cyprus, and you said at the time that it was never possible or feasible economically to create this pipeline that many people have been talking about from Cyprus to Crete, I think, connecting Cyprus fields to there. So if that's not economically possible or viable, who would use Cypriot gas once it is developed, in your opinion? Like, where's the market for it?
It's all going to Egypt. It's not even coming to Cyprus. So if and when Kronos gets developed, that's going to go to Egypt, although that technically is supposed to be turned into liquefied natural gas energy and then shipped off to wherever the market. But Aphrodite, the original field, the first field that was discovered, is supposed to be going straight to Egypt, domestic consumption. There's massive demand in Egypt because they're not producing enough of their own gas. And so, they have a lot of gas fields, but they're old and depleted. So demand in Egypt. And it seems like that's what the companies are telling the government here is, the only way we can make money out of this is send it to Egypt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, what is the economic situation in Cyprus? Because when I land in the northern part, coming from Turkey, you just see casino advertisements, you see real estate advertisements. How do you define Turkish economic health at this point? And how's that impact on politics? Because it does seem like there's a lot of outside money coming in. And how's that factoring into current day politics?
Yes, so this survey that was done by the University of Cyprus and a bunch of other universities and some Turkish Cypriot people as well, by Haris, maybe you can put a link in the notes. They found that the economy was number one. They did this house-to-house survey right before the election. So economy was number one, something like 27% of people named that as their number one issue. And what has happened lately is, you might have heard about all these arrests of people. At the moment, it's not Turkish Cypriots, but it's others who have been developing original Greek Cypriot property in the north. And so just a few days ago, this Israeli, who's also a Turkish national and a Portuguese national, was jailed for 5 years for developing a massive amount of development in northern Cyprus. So this has really damaged the construction. Obviously, people are scared to build now. And a second thing that's done it is a byproduct of US pressure on Turkey to get taken off the OECD grey list for money laundering. Turkey pushed the North to pass a law that forces you to register the ultimate beneficial owner of property. And before that happened, people were buying, unless you're Turkish. So if you're a foreigner who isn't Turkish, you're only allowed to buy one property. But everybody was breaking that rule and people were buying loads of property. Now that law is being implemented, apparently, and only Turks are allowed to buy, I think, up to 3 properties, if I remember. So this whole thing, it's sort of double whammy. We actually have to tell people who's buying the property. And this was because sort of Iranians were buying it and people that the Americans didn't like, basically. And then the other thing that if you're involved in developing Greek Cypriot property in the north, you may end up being arrested in France, like happened a week or so ago. So it's really waxed them quite hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and just from personal anecdotes, I have friends that are looking at property in Cyprus. They're Turkish citizens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them are trying to place a bet if there's going to be reunification. Do I bank out? And I'm guessing this weighs heavily on the talks, right? Like, what are property rights if you can just sell everything now?
Mm-hmm.
How do you make sense of that equation? Because it is grab and go kind of situation now for property purchases.
Yes, well, it has been, but I think, it was very obviously so the government will go on this side will say, oh, it's just the law taking its course, but it's very clear that they facilitated getting the evidence together to start pursuing these things. And for whatever reason, before, no previous government had done that. But under Christodoulidis, the current Greek Cypriot leader, president, that's what they've done. So it's another way of deliberately putting pressure on the Turkish Cypriots. It's I mean the property issues. Yeah, you could talk about it for hours. Is the case.
The immovable property building in Nicosia, right? Has to do.
Yeah, there's a movable property commission, which if it had plenty of resources, you might be able to sort a lot of it that way, but it doesn't. So it's probably, I think it's settled maybe 1% of the entire affected property. So yeah, and it's interesting because Turkey could have thrown a whole load of money at it to let it do that, but it hasn't. And it wants actually Turkish Cypriot administration to pay for the compensation rather than itself. So yeah.
Yeah. And just one more curiosity, if you can comment, you may not be able to, but according to foreign policy report before the elections, there's an estimate that 45,000 new citizens in northern Cyprus come from Turkey. Mm-hmm. People that voted in the elections, I'm guessing, is about 45,000. I don't know if there's a way to verify it or when they got their citizenship. And they also voted against the Turkey-backed candidate. So I'm wondering if you have any comments on Turks leaving Turkey and then voting against the incumbent government that has ties to Ankara. Do you see any dynamics or complaints from Turkish origin, Turkish Cypriots?
So I think there's a few things going on. One is you've got, let's say, the newcomers are generally, the urbanized, etc. So they might have moved to Northern Cyprus because they want to get away from, let's say, the restrictions that are currently in place in Turkey for free speech and like that. So there's that chunk. There's kind of well-to-do and so on. There's I can't remember what proportion. There are some Kurds as well who wouldn't naturally support whoever Ankara is backing, and then there's long-term or children these days of people who were settled by Turkey in the 1980s. So let's say their parents or grandparents would have been Anatolian, but they are now young, urban, much closer in culture to the Turkish Cypriots. And they know that and a chunk of those, at least the understanding to date, is that people who have TRNC citizenship would be citizens of United Cyprus. Who knows whether that will survive, but that was the idea back in 2004. And so they know that they would get an EU passport, I mean, there's really, really tiny daily irritations, like you can't get an Amazon parcel, apparently, or you can't get a Revolut account, you can't, all these kind of things that you can't do because TRNC is not recognized, so.
Yeah, you also can't go to Burger King in the TRNC, right? They have like burger, what's the name of it?
Burger Prince or something like that.
A fake Burger King or fake Starbucks.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens next. Do you have anything you're watching to know where things are headed? Are there any indicators that maybe you're keeping an eye on?
got, so I think it's going to be December now. There's what's called the personal envoy of the Secretary General. So Maria Olgin-Quella, if how you pronounce it, she's going to be meeting with and Secretary General Guterres, UN Secretary General. There's going to be a 5-party informal meeting. So it's Turkey, Greece, the UK, and the Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots. And I think we'll know if we're going anywhere at that meeting. They need to come out with something. Otherwise, it won't be let's start the negotiations, but it might be we've finally agreed on new crossing points across the buffer zone and things like that.
Great. Well, to wrap, I've been speaking to Fiona Mullen. She's the director of Sapienta Economics. It's a consultancy in Cyprus, mainly focusing on politics and economics in Cyprus and the region. The best way to find your work is Substack or your company website?
Yeah, if you go to Substack, you'll always be linked back to the company website. So yeah, sapienta.substack.com.
Great.
Thanks.
And thank you to our listeners. If you missed part of this live show, you can find the full recording on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and those other podcast websites. I'll put the links to the articles we discussed, and that should be available in about an hour or two. This podcast is a production of Turkey Recap, a newsletter on Turkish politics, foreign affairs, and business. Visit turkeyrecap.com for more coverage from right here in Ankara. Stay safe, stay well, and thank you again for doing this, Fiona.
You're welcome. Thank you, Diego. Bye.